Aerial tragedies often profoundly affect humanity. These catastrophic events, whether accidental or the result of deliberate attacks, typically leave very few, if any, survivors. Despite the impressive size and apparent robustness of modern aircraft, they can prove remarkably fragile in the face of extreme forces. Consequently, a fall from a significant altitude or a botched landing frequently results in the loss of all passengers and crew. This inherent vulnerability, coupled with the dramatic and often gruesome nature of such disasters, is perhaps why these incidents command such intense public attention and emotional impact. Within the extensive history of aviation incidents, a particularly unusual and unsettling phenomenon stands out: the recurring designation of Flight 191. This number, often followed by an airline's name, represents a specific flight path or route, not a particular aircraft. For instance, American Airlines Flight 191 denotes a predefined journey. Such numerical designators are unique to each airline, typically signifying the route's length and its ultimate destination. A flight between San Francisco and New York, for example, would carry a distinct nomenclature, different from a flight connecting Dallas Airport with Mexico City. These designations remain consistent daily, identifying a specific type of flight. Thus, an airline knows that Flight 428 consistently refers to the route between a particular origin and destination airport. It is crucial to understand that this numbering system identifies the trajectory, not the individual airplane. A single flight number can be serviced by various aircraft. Flight 428 on September 23rd might be operated by aircraft XAH 421, while the next day, a different plane could cover the identical route. Therefore, the flight number itself symbolizes the origin and destination, rather than the specific physical aircraft. American Airlines Flight 191 historically operated almost daily, departing from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport with Los Angeles as its final destination. Such regularly scheduled flights are publicly announced, allowing passengers to purchase tickets for specific routes. Flight 191, specifically, linked Chicago O'Hare to Los Angeles. However, this particular flight number carries a chillingly unusual history, marked by a series of events that defy simple explanation. A pivotal moment in this narrative occurred on May 25, 1979. The aircraft involved was a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, an aesthetically striking airliner. Gleaming silver, adorned with American Airlines' distinctive blue and red emblems, it presented an impressive sight under the sun. For 1979, the DC-10 was considered a relatively modern aircraft, having been in service for only a few years. Its design featured 3 powerful engines, one beneath each wing and a third integrated into the base of the vertical stabilizer. These 3 colossal turbines, combined with the aircraft's overall imposing presence, imbued it with an undeniable majesty. Internally, the DC-10 was renowned for its wide-body cabin, offering a spacious configuration with 2 rows of seats flanking the main cabin and a central aisle row for passengers. It was an exceptionally large aircraft, representing the pinnacle of contemporary aviation technology. On that fateful day of May 25, 1979, American Airlines Flight 191 began its routine preparations. The aircraft requested permission to taxi from the passenger loading area towards the runway threshold. This process, known as taxiing, involves moving along auxiliary runways to reach the designated takeoff position. The aircraft itself was functioning optimally, and the flight crew, including the pilots, were seasoned professionals with extensive experience. As the DC-10 reached the runway's edge approximately 2:50 p.m., it was perfectly on schedule. Air traffic control granted clearance for takeoff, confirming authorization to depart. The weather conditions were idyllic, a warm, sunny May afternoon offering seemingly perfect flying circumstances. At the controls was Captain Walter Lux, supported by First Officer James Dillard. The entire flight carried 11 additional crew members and 258 passengers. A final, meticulous pre-flight check was conducted within the complex cockpit, a dense array of instruments, indicators, and buttons. With all final instructions issued, the pilot initiated the takeoff sequence. This critical phase involved accelerating the three powerful engines to maximum thrust, propelling the aircraft down the runway. As speed rapidly increased, the V1 command was given, followed by the rotation call, instructing the pilots to lift the nose wheel from the ground, allowing the aircraft to begin its ascent. The deafening roar of the three colossal turbines operating at full power filled the air. The pilots, feeling the immense force through their controls, noted a subtle vibration. Then, abruptly, an unforeseen event unfolded. The aircraft began to vibrate unusually and control was suddenly lost. The pilots experienced an unexpected and terrifying roll to the left, a banking maneuver that was completely uncommanded. Despite the crew's desperate attempts to regain control, the aircraft continued its horrifying turn, completely inverting before plummeting brutally to the ground, crashing into nearby hangars. The DC-10 impacted approximately 1,000 meters from the end of the runway, disintegrating instantly and erupting into a colossal fireball. Just 15 seconds after liftoff, having barely achieved an altitude of 30 meters, the aircraft executed its catastrophic roll and descended, obliterating everything in its path. Being an enormous aircraft fully laden with fuel, the resulting explosion was cataclysmic. All 258 passengers, 13 crew members, and 2 individuals on the ground within one of the hangars perished instantly upon impact. The authorities were left in a state of profound perplexity, and the incident quickly escalated into a profoundly dramatic case. It represented the deadliest single aircraft accident in U.S. history at the time, claiming the lives of an unprecedented number of individuals in a single flight for 1979. Compounding the horror, the entire catastrophic sequence was captured in photographs. An individual positioned outside the airport, engaged in documenting departing aircraft, inadvertently recorded the precise moments as the DC-10 began its fateful roll, inverted, and plunged to the ground. The resulting images are chilling. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, immediately launched an exhaustive investigation. Their initial findings revealed that the aircraft had lost one of its engines during the critical phase of takeoff. Mere seconds after liftoff, the engine mounted on the left wing had detached. As it spun free, it violently struck the wing, tearing away the pylon, the crucial support structure connecting the engine to the wing. This catastrophic event simultaneously ripped through the control cables, hydraulic mechanisms, and electrical wiring, effectively crippling the entire left-wing control system. With the left wing compromised and the powerful right-wing engine still operating at full thrust, the imbalanced forces caused the aircraft to tragically invert. The mechanical sequence of events became clear. Subsequent findings revealed that the accident was ultimately attributable to a maintenance failure. The aircraft was not old, damaged, or misused. Rather, a critical error occurred during a routine engine replacement procedure. Maintenance personnel, while performing routine servicing and engine changes, had inadvertently damaged and fractured the pylon support. This faulty procedure initiated the chain of events. American Airlines regularly replaced its engines as part of its maintenance protocols, but in this instance, the technicians responsible for the installation had compromised the pylon's structural integrity. Given the extremely low altitude, the pilots were afforded no opportunity whatsoever to recover the aircraft or avert the disaster. Consequently, neither the passengers nor the crew had any chance of survival. Flight 191 had tragically claimed the lives of all on board, along with 2 individuals on the ground. One might wonder why this particular story belongs within narratives of the darker side, given that it does not immediately appear to involve human perversity or the supernatural. The answer lies in a simple yet profound reason. The 1979 American Airlines disaster was not an isolated incident. This Flight 2 was operated by an imposing aircraft, a Lockheed TriStar L-1011, an airliner strikingly similar in design to the DC-10, featuring 3 engines, one under each wing and a third mounted in the tail section. This elegant white aircraft, adorned with Delta's iconic colors, departed under normal conditions. The pilots were highly experienced, both fully qualified to operate the TriStar. On board were 163 individuals, comprising passengers and crew. The takeoff and initial flight proceeded smoothly. However, as the aircraft began its descent for a scheduled stop at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, it encountered a severe thunderstorm. The storm had been visible, and communications with air traffic control had been ongoing for some time. Shortly before Flight 191's TriStar approached Dallas, a smaller Learjet had successfully landed and reported the prevailing conditions. Despite this awareness, the Delta aircraft suddenly and inexplicably lost lift just moments before touching down. The plane began to fall rapidly, accelerating towards the ground. The pilots desperately attempted to recover, initiating emergency protocols. Recordings from the cockpit reveal the intense efforts, the pulling of controls, the urgent commands, as the captain, clearly knowledgeable, fought to save the aircraft. Yet the plane remained unresponsive. It crashed onto a highway, crushing a passing automobile, then continued its uncontrolled trajectory across farmland before colliding with water tanks. The impact generated a horrific fireball that incinerated passengers in the front half of the aircraft. A surge of burning, still liquid jet fuel engulfed the cabin, washing over passengers and causing unspeakable casualties. However, not all perished. Upon impact with the water tanks near the airport, the rear section of the aircraft separated from the main fuselage, tumbling several times before coming to rest away from the inferno. This separation allowed 27 individuals to survive, some with grievous injuries and severe burns. Flight 191 has, over time, become synonymous with ill fortune, a designation seemingly plagued by calamities. It remains a singular and eerie anomaly in aviation history. 3 distinct fatal accidents, all sharing the identical flight number, despite not necessarily traversing the same routes. The narrative of Flight 191, however, extends beyond these 3 harrowing accidents, encompassing even stranger occurrences. The first anomaly surrounding American Airlines Flight 191 on May 25, 1979, involved its captain, Walter Lux. He was not originally scheduled to be on that flight. Having just arrived in Chicago from Phoenix, Captain Lux was off duty. However, upon reaching the American Airlines crew lounge, a fellow pilot who was assigned to command Flight 191 approached him with an urgent request. This colleague had an unavoidable personal commitment and needed someone to cover his shift. Lux, within his permissible flight hours and offered additional compensation, found the proposition appealing as it would allow him to fly closer to his family for the upcoming weekend with his son. He accepted, unknowingly altering his destiny. Yet the captain's unusual presence was not the only strange circumstance. The renowned actress Lindsay Wagner, celebrated for her role as the Bionic Woman in a popular 1970s television series, was moments away from boarding Flight 191 with her mother. As they stood at the check-in counter, Lindsay suddenly expressed an overwhelming sense of unease, stating that something was not right and she did not wish to board the aircraft. Despite the counter agent's reassurances about the plane's modernity and the captain's experience, Wagner remained resolute. Her mother discreetly urged her not to cause a scene, but Lindsay, despite her character's bravery, was gripped by a powerful premonition. She firmly declared, "No, Mom, I'm not getting on that plane, and I'm not letting you get on that plane either." Gathering their luggage, they apologized and returned home, unknowingly escaping a horrific fate. However, the most bizarre premonition related to Flight 191 emerged through the experiences of David Booth. Booth, an ordinary office worker with no connection to aviation, lived a tranquil, routine life with his family. This changed dramatically on May 14th, when he awoke in a cold sweat, profoundly disturbed by a terrifying nightmare. In his dream, he witnessed an enormous three-engine aircraft plummeting to the ground, followed by a colossal fireball. The vividness of the dream left him breathless, but as the morning progressed, he dismissed it, rationalizing that as a non-traveler, it held no personal relevance. The following night, however, the nightmare returned. In the early hours, Booth once again saw the impressive silver aircraft, as he described it, taking off. He heard the roar of the engines, then a sudden turn, followed by an explosion, the fireball, and a towering cloud of black smoke. The dream repeated itself for a third night, each recurrence bringing more precise and terrifying details, increasingly convincing him of its horrifying reality. On the fourth consecutive night, driven by an escalating sense of dread, Booth decided to contact the FAA. His initial calls were met with skepticism. The first respondent dismissed him. The second threatened to call the police, and the third labeled him insane. Booth's persistence, however, eventually led him to an FAA investigator. The authorities, perhaps suspecting a link to terrorism given recent bomb attacks on aircraft by groups like the IRA and PLO, initially treated him as a potential threat, demanding his identity and details. Booth, having nothing to hide, fully cooperated, recounting his detailed dreams to the FAA official. A subsequent background check by the FBI confirmed Booth's clean record. Undeterred by the lack of immediate action, Booth, after another recurring dream, called the FAA again the next day, speaking with the same investigator. The investigator, intrigued by Booth's consistent and non-terrorist demeanor, continued to take notes. FBI investigators visited Booth at his office, confirming his long employment and stable residence, corroborating his story and dismissing any terrorist profile. During a face-to-face interview, the FAA agent pressed Booth for specific details about the aircraft. He accurately described it as having 3 engines and being silver. When asked about the airport, Booth admitted he couldn't identify it, as he didn't travel and recognized no distinguishing signs. He described generic white buildings with windows. The FAA even showed him photographs of various airports, but Booth could only offer fragmented recollections from his dreams. The premonitions persisted. On May 24th, Booth again dreamt of the plane's catastrophic fall, and the following morning he called the FAA, stating the dream felt more real than ever. The FAA, however, remained unable to act on such an abstract warning. By 3 p.m. that day, American Airlines Flight 191 lay shattered and burning on the ground. The strange occurrences surrounding Flight 191 are not limited to the American Airlines disaster. In the case of Prinair Flight 191 in Puerto Rico, the circumstances were equally baffling. The flight had proceeded normally without any reported mechanical issues. The pilot approached for a night landing at Ponce Airport, a regional facility without permanent air traffic control. A lone guard was responsible for activating the runway lights. As the aircraft neared, the pilot reported to the tower and the lights illuminated the runway. The pilot touched down normally but then abruptly aborted the landing, shouting, according to cockpit recordings, about an obstacle on the runway. Despite a clear, calm night with no storm and the runway lights fully operational, the pilot initiated a toga, takeoff go-around maneuver, applying full power to attempt to climb and circle around. However, the maneuver was executed precipitously, causing the aircraft to lose lift, crash, and break into 1,000 pieces. The subsequent investigation confirmed a proper initial landing. The original accident report cited an unauthorized vehicle on the runway as the cause. Yet, a terrible truth emerged during later investigations. There was no vehicle, no one on the runway at that time. Airport personnel, vehicles, and potential intruders were all accounted for elsewhere. Ponce Airport was fully fenced, with only one access point to the runways. The last employee to leave had done so half an hour before Flight 191's landing, parking their vehicle in its designated spot. The ghost vehicle mystery deepened. The Delta Airlines Flight 191 accident provided a similar, chilling parallel. While the American Airlines crash was extraordinary due to its multiple premonitions, The Prinair 191 case was eerie because no physical obstacle was found on a clear, moonlit night. The Delta incident, although attributed to wind shear, a poorly understood phenomenon in the 1980s for which aircraft lacked adequate warnings, still harbored anomalies. Crucially, a smaller aircraft that landed just 2 minutes prior experienced no issues. Furthermore, the Delta pilot made strange comments in the final moments of the flight, captured on the cockpit voice recorder. And, much like Lindsay Wagner's experience with American Airlines 191, several Delta passengers also inexplicably decided not to board the flight. The Delta pilot himself reportedly confided in his wife before departure that he felt a peculiar sense of unease. This profound tapestry of events, 3 devastating accidents, all bearing the Flight 191 designation, not only claimed numerous lives, but were also interwoven with premonitions, ominous coincidences, and instances like a captain flying a fateful flight he was never meant to be on. These elements undeniably position the story of Flight 191 squarely within the realm of the darker, unexplained narratives.